You wake up after 8 hours of sleep, but it feels like you didn't rest at all. Your eyes open, your body moves, yet somewhere deep inside, something still hurts to carry. It's not your muscles that are tired, it's something quieter, deeper, a fatigue that doesn't live in the body, but in the soul. It's the exhaustion that builds when life keeps asking for more of you than you can give. When every day becomes a performance you didn't audition for, smiling, showing up, holding it together while pieces of you quietly fall apart. And when someone asks, "What's wrong?" you don't even know what to say, because nothing is dramatically wrong. It's just that everything feels too much. This isn't laziness or weakness or some invisible flaw in your character. Psychologists call it emotional exhaustion. The moment your inner battery finally gives out after years of pretending it could keep running forever. You can't point to a single reason because it isn't one thing that broke you. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small moments where you pushed yourself just to stay afloat. People think exhaustion means sleeping more, but this kind of tiredness, sleep can't touch it, because what you're really craving isn't rest, it's relief. Relief from the noise, the pressure, the constant expectation to perform. You don't want to disappear. You just want the world to stop spinning long enough for you to breathe. At first it's subtle. You tell yourself you're just a little tired. You pour coffee over the emptiness and keep moving because that's what people do, right? But over time, the math stops working. You keep giving energy to your job, your family, your responsibilities, yet nothing ever fills you back up. The emotional balance sheet slips into permanent deficit. Psychologists have a name for this imbalance: emotional depletion. It's what happens when your emotional output keeps exceeding your input for too long. You become like a phone stuck on 1%, somehow still trying to run every app. And people look at you and think, you're fine, you're functioning. But inside, everything feels muted. Joy used to visit you like sunlight through a window. Now it's just a memory. You laugh when you're supposed to. You show up because you should. But it's mechanical, like muscle memory for emotions you don't actually feel anymore. The cruel irony? The people who end up here are usually the ones who give the most, the helpers, the fixers, the ones who say, "It's okay, I've got it," even when they don't. They've learned how to keep everything around them from falling apart, but never how to keep themselves from crumbling quietly in the process. This isn't weakness, it's overuse. You've been too strong for too long. When exhaustion lingers long enough, it doesn't just live in your thoughts, it rewires your biology. The brain, ever the survivalist, starts to adjust. It learns that life is constant stress, so it begins filtering everything through fatigue. Your reward systems slow down. Dopamine, the chemical behind motivation and pleasure, flickers like a dying bulb. The things that once gave you a sense of purpose or excitement start to feel flat. You stop chasing joy, not because you don't want it, but because your brain has quietly concluded it's unreliable. This is where science meets the soul. The human mind was never built to sprint endlessly through pressure, noise, and fear of falling behind. Under chronic stress, your nervous system shifts into permanent defense mode. Your body's saying, "Let's just survive today," even when survival stopped being the goal a long time ago. So when someone says, "I'm just tired," they rarely mean they need a nap. It's the mind's quiet confession. I've been carrying too much for too long. The spark that once made life feel meaningful has dimmed, not because it burned out, but because it's been smothered under the weight of constant endurance. And here's the truth that almost no one says out loud. Your brain isn't broken, it's protecting you. That dullness, that emptiness, isn't a failure of willpower. It's the body's way of whispering, "Please stop, I can't keep running on survival forever." We live in a world that worships exhaustion and calls it ambition. You're praised for staying late, for answering emails at midnight, for grinding until your eyes blur. But when you slow down, when you dare to breathe, people look at you like you've failed the test of modern worth. That's the trap. Our culture confuses movement with meaning. Productivity has become morality. You're not just doing your job, you're proving your value. Every idle moment feels like a crime scene where guilt comes to investigate. And the voice in your head whispers, you don't deserve rest until you've earned it. But how do you earn something that should be a birthright? Rest isn't a luxury, it's maintenance. Yet we treat it like a prize for the survivors, something you get only after you've burned yourself to the edge. So you keep running on empty, telling yourself that peace can wait until the next milestone, the next raise, the next validation. The irony? When you finally stop, it doesn't feel peaceful. It feels wrong. You sit still, and your mind panics, as if silence itself is a failure. That's what this system does. It trains you to fear stillness, to believe that unless you're producing, you're falling behind. But here's the truth that burns quietly beneath all that noise. Rest isn't failure. It's rebellion. In a culture that profits from your exhaustion, learning to rest is a radical act of self-respect. People love to mistake exhaustion for weakness. They see your quiet, your distance, your heavy eyes, and assume you've given up. But the truth is the opposite. You've been holding everything together for far too long. The ones most tired of existing are often the strongest souls in the room. The peacekeepers, the caretakers, the ones who show up for everyone else, even when they've got nothing left to give. They've spent years translating chaos into calm for others, while silently swallowing their own storms. You've carried emotions you never processed, responsibilities you never asked for, expectations no human could meet. You became the reliable one, the person everyone depends on, until one day you realize no one's ever asked how you're really doing. And when they finally do, you don't even have the words. That's not weakness, that's endurance. It's what happens when strength becomes your only language. You've mastered survival so completely that your body forgot how to rest. And over time, that kind of unrelenting strength doesn't make you stronger. It hollows you out. Because when every day is about just getting through, there's no room left to feel alive. You start mistaking numbness for peace, silence for rest, and exhaustion for normal. But here's the truth. Being tired of existing isn't proof you failed. It's proof you've been too strong for too long. When you start pulling away, people notice, and they worry. They say things like, you've changed, or you never come out anymore. What they don't understand is that you're not running from the world. You're retreating from the noise. Isolation, for someone who's burned out, isn't rejection. It's protection. After too many years of emotional exposure, constantly performing, pleasing, explaining, even small interactions start to feel like heavy lifting. Small talk turns into static. Social energy becomes a currency you no longer have. So you choose quiet, not because you hate people, but because silence doesn't demand anything from you. This is what psychologists call self-preservation mode. Your nervous system, overstimulated and underrested, seeks safety in solitude. It's like stepping inside a shelter during a storm. Not because you want to hide forever, but because you can't take one more gust of wind. The irony is that solitude often gets mistaken for surrender. People assume you've stopped caring, but really, you're caring in the only way you still can, by giving yourself the distance you were never allowed before. And while the silence can feel empty, it's also honest. It's the first place where your soul doesn't have to perform, where you can finally stop pretending to be fine. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like fighting, it looks like pausing. At some point the days start to blur. You wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat, and suddenly weeks have passed without a single moment that felt alive. It's not that you hate life, it's that you can't find the point of it anymore. Everything that once felt purposeful now feels mechanical, like you're stuck on autopilot inside someone else's story. This is what psychologists call existential fatigue, when your soul grows weary from living without direction. Not because life is bad, but because it's hollow. The routines, the goals, the constant motion, They all start to lose meaning when they're disconnected from who you really are. So you start asking dangerous questions, the kind that rattle the illusion of normal. Why am I doing all this? Who is this version of me? And those questions, as bleak as they sound, are not signs of despair, they're signs of awakening. Because when the soul asks, what's the point? What it's really saying is, I need a reason to stay. It's not giving up, it's trying to wake up, trying to find something real, something that makes breathing feel worth the effort again. The truth is, this kind of emptiness isn't the end. It's the beginning of a turning point, a quiet rebellion against a life that no longer fits. The moment you stop pretending to be fulfilled by things that don't move you, you begin to make room for the things that will. When everything feels numb, the instinct is to fix, chase new goals, reinvent yourself, do something. But that's the trap. You don't need more motion, you need meaning. Because when purpose disappears, even breathing starts to feel like effort. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps of World War II, once wrote that humans can endure almost any how if they have a why. It's one of the most important truths psychology has ever uncovered, that purpose isn't a luxury of the inspired. It's the lifeline of the exhausted. When people rediscover that why, something begins to shift. The tiredness doesn't vanish overnight, but it starts to change shape. It becomes directional instead of destructive. You move from I'm exhausted because nothing matters to I'm exhausted because I'm rebuilding something that does. Meaning is not grand or cinematic. It doesn't always show up as a new career, a revelation, or a sudden clarity. Sometimes it's small, painfully small, like the act of caring again about something, anything. Watering a plant, finishing a book, calling someone just to listen. These are the quiet sparks that remind your mind it still has reasons to reach forward. Because meaning doesn't erase tiredness, it transforms it. It turns survival into growth. It turns I can't keep going into maybe I can go differently. And that difference, that subtle shift from despair to direction, is where healing truly begins. Healing doesn't start with a grand decision, it starts with a quiet one. The choice to stop lying to yourself, to stop saying I'm fine when you're not, to stop calling chaos normal, to finally look at the parts of your life that drain you and admit, I can't live like this anymore. That's where realignment begins, not with self-improvement, but with self-truth. You start noticing what exhausts you, the people who only take, the routines that suffocate, the version of yourself that exists solely to make others comfortable. And you start asking hard questions. What if I stopped performing? What if I stopped earning love through exhaustion? What if rest isn't laziness but recovery? These small acts of honesty are radical, because the world teaches you to push harder, to medicate discomfort with busyness. But real healing is quieter. It's not a transformation montage. It's learning to sit with your own tiredness without judging it. When you begin to realign, something subtle shifts inside you. You stop chasing the life you should have and start listening to the one that's been whispering underneath all along. The one that wants slower mornings, kinder boundaries, more truth. You begin to realize that peace was never waiting at the finish line of achievement. It was always buried beneath the noise, waiting for you to stop running long enough to hear it. At some point, you stop trying to fix yourself and start simply feeling again. Not perfectly, not all at once, just honestly. You let the walls crack a little. You cry without needing a reason. You rest without earning it. And in that stillness, something miraculous begins to happen. You start noticing life again. Not the loud, spectacular kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind that was always there. The warmth of sunlight spilling across your bed. The sound of rain that doesn't demand your productivity. The song that makes you feel seen for the first time in months. These moments, fleeting, small, sacred, are what psychologists call awe. An oar, as studies show, is a biological reset button. It reminds your nervous system that the world is still beautiful, that you still belong to it. Because energy doesn't only come from sleep or food, it comes from alignment. When your actions start matching your values again, you stop leaking life force into things that don't deserve it. Even the smallest tasks begin to feel lighter, more bearable. And maybe that's the secret. Being tired of existing was never the end. It was a signal, a compass pointing you back to what's real, to honesty, slowness, connection, meaning. You were never broken, you were just being called home to yourself. So when the weight returns, and it will, don't panic. Just remember what it means. It means you're someone who feels deeply, who sees the world for what it is, both heavy and holy. Because maybe being tired of existing isn't proof that you failed at life. Maybe it means you finally paused long enough to understand what living really is.